Hi, everybody. My name's Joe Dale. Welcome to the latest Gallery Teachers Masterclass. This masterclass is looking at BYOD Educational Podcasting to promote oracy with Anchor. Enjoy. It's a real pleasure to be with you today to talk to you all about podcasting. I was podcasting back in 2006. So I was a really, really early adopter of podcasting, but straight away I could see from the point of view of language learning that the power of podcasting, the way in which it can really enhance teaching and learning, the way it can enhance speaking and listening skills. It can also enhance writing skills as well. If you ask your students to create a script, either individually or collaboratively, the whole recording and editing process can really help to reinforce the content that you're studying in lessons. Back in the day, I did a podcast around grammar. So I would ask the students to create podcasts based on what is an adjective or how to conjugate different verbs, etc. And I found that it really, really helped their confidence and their understanding of the grammar piece. So I really hope that you find this session useful, and let's make a start. Okay. So in this workshop agenda, as you can see, we're going to cover the following aspects. We're going to have a look at what podcasting is all about, an introduction to podcasting. We're going to look at how to build your own podcast from scratch with anchor.fm. So I'll be literally taking you step by step through the process. We'll be looking at how to record and edit using anchor.fm. We'll be looking at how to add music and effects to your podcast to make it sound really professional. We'll also be talking about how to record remote interviews using anchor.fm. And I'll show you how easy it is to build your episode as well from scratch. So to start off with, what is podcasting all about? I always suggest that podcasting is similar to subscribing or following one of your favorite TV shows. So it means that you can access the content whenever you want on demand. If you think about when you watch a program on Netflix, as it were, you can go to Netflix whenever you want. You can binge watch a series on Netflix. You can subscribe to different channels on, say, YouTube, and you get access to any new content. It's the same sort of idea. So podcasting has been around for a long time, since 2004 officially. Ben Hammersley from The Guardian was the person who is quoted as the person who first said that the word podcasting in print, it's a portmanteau between the Apple iPod and the word broadcasting, and that's where podcasting has come from. So in this session, you're going to learn all the basics of podcasting, how to get started with it, and I would really encourage you to try out podcasting. We haven't done already with your students, because it can be a great way of engaging them, of motivating them, and improving their listening and speaking skills. Okay, so that's what we're covering in today's workshop. And as you can see, to finish off with, we're going to be seeing how easy it is to publish your podcast to a real audience, and how to distribute your show as well to different platforms, including Spotify. Okay, so why podcast? This particular lovely lady here is a lady called Rachel Smith, who's a former languages teacher. She's now working with Shobi as well. She's an Apple Distinguished Educator. And these are some of the reasons why she thinks that podcasting is a good idea. As you can see, she's talking about how podcasting can improve oracy skills, how it can improve student confidence, all these things I've talked about already. I think it can be very useful for helping students to organize themselves if they have to, for example, write a script, or they have to work out the order of the podcast they're going to put together. So maybe they've got an introduction, they've got a middle section whereby they're explaining a grammar point, or they're explaining some vocabulary, for example, or giving a short presentation. And then they have the final part, which could be, for example, a quiz or a way of testing the listener's understanding. When I used to do grammar podcasts with my students, when I was teaching in my middle school, what I used to do is I do exactly that. We'd have the introduction, we'd have the explanation of the grammar, and then with the quiz at the end, the students would give the listener thinking time. So about 5 seconds or so, they would ask the question, they would leave about a 5-second pause to give enough time for people to think about what the answer was, and then they would then give the answer. And I think that's a really powerful way of using audio in that way. As has been said already, you're publishing to a real audience when you're podcasting. It's a great way of being able to promote your community, promoting your English language learning, or your school, or wherever you find yourselves. It can be a great way to connect with your community, It's obviously lovely if you get people from all around the world downloading your podcast, but in lots of ways, the thing that I would suggest that you need to nurture first of all is your local community. So let them know that you've created a podcast. Let them know through a newsletter, through posters, through social media, whatever it is that you need to do. Let them know that this podcast is available and that they can download it for free and they can access it and listen to a range of different voices talking about their love of language learning, for example. You can, as has been said here as well, you can represent your community in a very positive light. Podcasting is a very positive thing to do. I think it's a great way of raising the status or highlighting your community. It's also good for working to deadlines. You have to be quite strict, I think, when you're putting together a podcast. It can take quite a lot of time, so it's important to be organized. If you're going to create a podcast whereby you've got different contributions from different people, then you really need to have, say, one person in charge of making sure that people send you the audio on time, that it is of a good quality. You can also pull together a group, like a club, as it were, of students who are particularly interested in the whole podcasting editing process. And that can really help as well with working to deadlines. So that's also a really useful skill, I think, that young people can learn through podcasting that will help them in later life. And as I've said, it can improve their writing skills if you get the students to write their individual scripts, or you get them to work in pairs or in small groups to write a script, either collaborative via, say, a Google Doc or class notebook. Then that can be a great way of improving their writing skills as well. And the most important thing, of course, at the end is to have fun. And podcasting is a lot of fun. It is a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun as well. So those are some few pointers about why podcasting is a good idea. So how do we get started? I would suggest in a language learning context, here are some points that you could consider when starting a podcast. In lots of ways, all you need, the actual sort of the physical devices that you need for a podcast is you just need a mobile phone, or you need a laptop and some sort of microphone. You can just use the inbuilt microphone in your laptop. Obviously, you get an inbuilt microphone on your phone. I would also recommend investing in an external microphone. The one that I'm using right now, which is here, is a Samsung CO3U microphone, which I've had for a long time. It's a USB microphone, and it's always done a really good job. I've also invested in other microphones over the years. The latest one that I've bought is one by Audio Technica, which is an ATR 2100X, which I would really recommend for podcasting because it doesn't pick up too much room noise. And it's a dynamic microphone, and it does a really good job. You sound like a DJ, I think, in lots of ways. So to start off with podcasting, think about a theme that lends itself well to podcasting. So, for example, talking about your daily routine, talking about your local area, talking about the sorts of hobbies you like to do. That will work really nicely with either one voice or a range of voices talking about that particular topic. You could, as I've suggested already, you could think about running some sort of podcasting club whereby you put together a dedicated team of students and you give them different roles. So it could be, for example, editor, interviewer, presenter, etc. I think that's a really useful tip. It might be that if you're trying to do a podcast and everyone's recording in a room all together, obviously you're going to get some background noise, which could be frustrating for the listener. So it might be an idea to ask those people who are contributing to the podcast to make their recording in a quiet room, ideally with carpet, which will deaden the sound. They could record in a bedroom. That's a really good place to record because of the fact that you get the soft furnishings of the bed, etc., or in a front room whereby you have a sofa or some armchairs that you can sit on that will deaden the sound as well. What I wouldn't recommend is you record in a place which has got hard surfaces. So, for example, if you had a laminate floor, that wouldn't be a good place to record because the sound would bounce here, there, and everywhere. But you can, even with a bit of microphone technique, you can make a really good quality recording. Okay, I'd also think carefully about how frequently you're going to publish your episodes. If you're trying to do a podcast every week, then that can become onerous. Personally, when I've done podcasts, I normally would do, say, one a month, which seems to work really well. That gives you plenty of time to organize your content. The consistency is useful for the listener because they know exactly when the new episode is going to come out, and it doesn't become an onerous task. If you record a few episodes and then you leave it for a few weeks, then that can become confusing for the listener. Another idea is to actually batch record a whole set of episodes in one go. For example, if you had a bit of freer time, maybe in August or in September of this year, then you could then find some time to maybe batch record some episodes and then put them out on a regular basis, let's say once a month, as it were. So organizing your routine, your program for that is really, really important. And I also think it's a really good idea to create a template whereby you know exactly what you're covering each section. I talked about the language learning template that I used to use, which was introduction, explanation of the grammar or the vocabulary, and then some sort of quiz. So whatever you want to do, depending on what the podcast is going to be, you could maybe talk about, you know, school news. You could talk about a sports event, for example, that's happening, but all do that through the medium of English. So those are a few ideas on how to get started. Some other ideas, particularly in relation to Anchor, is that you create a dedicated email address for your Anchor podcast. I'm going to be going through that in more detail in a moment. And that you don't share this email address with the students. So you are the gatekeeper of the content. All I would recommend that you do from the point of view of the student sending you audio is they send you, let's say, a link from a tool like Vocaroo, which I'll be demonstrating live later on. Vocaroo is a really easy way of recording audio. You just have the red record button in the middle of the screen. It works on all devices. You record your audio, you get a link, and then you share that link with the teacher. A good way of distributing that information or to collect in the links is using a Google form or a Microsoft form. So you can create, for example, a short answer with the name of the students at the top, and then another short answer box whereby you literally say, paste in the Vocaroo link for your podcast contribution. So the students will record in Vocaroo, copy the link, and then put it into the Microsoft form or the Google form and send it to the teacher. And as a result of that, the teacher can then generate a spreadsheet, which will have all the names of the students who contributed with all the links as well. So it's a really handy way of doing that. And make sure that you say to the students when they're recording their episodes or their audio that they don't say their names from an e-safety point of view. That's clearly referring to if students are below the age of 18. Okay. Right. Some other ideas when they're writing a script. Instead of reading out a script word by word, which can sound very artificial and unprofessional in a way, or okay, it can sound very obvious that they're reading from a script. What I would suggest, based on my experience, is that you create a set of bullet points. So you know exactly what it is you want to talk about, but it gives you that structure, but it doesn't make it too rigid, which can make it sound really, really awkward. So it's very obvious. It can be very obvious if the listener can hear that the person is reading out a script rather than working on bullet points, which will make the audio sound much, much more natural, I think. As I've talked about, you can use Vocaroo to send in audio, which you can then incorporate within your Anchor podcast. You can record each section. So you have, for example, some sort of presentation, some sort of introduction, some sort of interview, maybe some reflections or a summary at the end, summarizing what's been talked about in the podcast. Lots of different ways of doing that. Collecting all the recorded audio as the gatekeeper, as the teacher in this context, I think is really important for an e-safety point of view. And so I wouldn't recommend that the students, unless they're over the age of 18, that you ask them to create accounts or anything like that. I would just create the one account and then ask the students to send you all the audio. So you're the person who's then putting the episode together. You could clearly, if you wanted to, assign that as a role in, say, a club, but you'd have to be watching over the students to make sure they were doing it properly, etc., and being safe and sensible. Which is clearly very important. Okay. So Anchor.fm, if you haven't heard about it before, it was acquired by Spotify in February 2019. There have been other podcasting hosts that have existed in the past that have been completely free. But unfortunately, if things are free, it might be that they suddenly disappear. So just because it's free doesn't mean it will always be there. So I'm very buoyed about the fact that Anchor has been acquired by Spotify, which means I'm sure it will be the equivalent in the future of YouTube. So instead of it being sort of video for YouTube, it'll be audio for Anchor. So I think that the fact that it has been acquired by a really, really large company means that you're safe with your audio. It won't suddenly disappear. But clearly, you need to have a backup at the same time of any audio that you produce. So it is a completely free solution. You can use it not only for recording and editing, but also hosting. It's not only the hosting side of things, which is what you have to pay for. So that's absolutely fantastic. And it really gives students and teachers the license to just have a play, have an experimentation with the podcast, and just have lots of fun producing something which is going to help with teaching and learning and with your English skills, but also you're publishing to a real audience. So everyone's going to benefit from that. It's going to be a win-win and completely for free while you're doing that. So that's really fantastic. So in this next section of the webinar, I'm going to be going through step by step on how to create a podcast using anchor.fm. I'll show you how easy it is to create an account. I'm going to give you a little trick there as well in relation to Gmail, how to record an introduction. I'll show you how Vocary works. And then I'm going to show you how easy it is to build up an episode and build in different segues between the episode sections as well. And then we'll finally publish the recording. And I'll show you then how you can then access that via Spotify directly, and how you distribute it to different platforms as well, to other platforms as well. So there we are. And here we go for the step-by-step guide. So I'm going to come out of the presentation and we'll go to anchor.fm. And as you can see, this is what it looks like. So I've literally just gone to anchor.fm and I've clicked on sign up. So I'm now going to put in my name like this, and I have to put in an email address. Now the email address is really important. Now my email address, my Gmail address, should I say, is the following: jodell100@gmail.com. But the little trick I was talking about is the following. If you put the cursor just before the @ sign there, and you put the plus icon, you can then add a keyword, and Anchor will think, not just Anchor, but any place that you put this particular trick, Anchor will think that you're using your standard Gmail account. Which you are, but you're adding a keyword, which means that actually in a way, it's like a new email address, but it's not a new email address, because all the notifications that you get from Anchor or from any site that you use this with will be sent to the same inbox, to the default Jodell100 inbox. So with that in mind, if I put in Jodell100 at Gallery Teachers with no spaces like that, then that will be absolutely perfect. So you could use this trick and put in any keyword you wanted here, and all the information from, say, having to verify the account, for example, which we'll have to do in a second, will all go to just my standard Jodell100 Gmail account. So that's a really, really useful tip that's been around for a long, long time, and I'd encourage you to use that. I'm now going to put in a password like that. That's great. And you do have to say your date of birth. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say what my date of birth is here, but you could obviously make that up if you wanted to. And you're not, as a student, I'm not recommending that you ask the students to create their accounts or anything like that. So that won't be an issue. And as I said, you could just make it up if you wanted to, but you have to say you're over, obviously, a certain age. So anyway, there we are. And then here it says, please send me news and offers from Anchor. I'm just going to turn that off, and I'm going to click sign up. So I've got my name, I've got my email address, I've got my password, I've got my date of birth, and I click sign up. Okay, fantastic. Now I'll click save there in Chrome. That's great. And what I have to do now is I have to, as you can see, it says resend email. I have to go to my email address and I have to approve the address. Now I'm just going to go to my Gmail account like this, and we'll see if the email has come in. And here we are. Perfect. So you can see here it is. And all I have to do now is click on the verify link, and we're good to go. Okay, perfect. So there I am at verified. Go back to the episode, and that's all fantastic. Okay, lovely. So the first thing we're going to do is go through the process here. As you can see, it says, welcome to Anchor. Here's what happens next. Make your first episode, set up your podcast, etc., etc. So I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to click on let's do it. And you can see that this is the interface that you have once you are ready to record. So you can see that you've got the recording option here. This is obviously in the desktop version of Anchor. It also works as an app. So you have the iOS app, you have the Android app. It works on all devices, as I said in the title. It's perfect for a bring your own device context. And if you're logged in with the same account in the app on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android phone, as well as in the web version, then everything is connected, everything is synced together. So essentially what you're doing here, you're recording your audio and you're dragging and dropping the content into what's called the episode builder. So let me give you a quick demo of how we could record an intro. So the first thing we're going to do here is select the microphone. So I'm using my Samsung CO3U. If I click on here, you'll see I've got some other microphones which are available, but the one I'm going to use for this demonstration is the Samsung CO3U USB microphone. This is another option as well. It says record video on Riverside. Riverside is a paid for feature. That's not something that I've looked at before, but you can use Riverside as a way of doing remote interviews. There's also Squadcast as well, which are probably the two best known, which are paid options. They're both about $20 to $30 per month to use that service, but you do get very good quality audio by using either Riverside or Squadcast. There are some free alternatives. There's one called Zencaster, which is Zencastr, and there's another one called Clean Feed, which also allows you to record each person as a separate track, which makes editing a lot easier. Okay, so I click record now, and let's go for it. Okay. So I wasn't quite ready for that. So I'm gonna. So it's a great idea in order to re-record when you're ready to re-record, so that you can get a better quality recording each time that you re-record, and probably you're going to sound more confident anyway the second time you do that. So that's perfect. Obviously, I did that on purpose. I can now click delete permanently or download audio file. So I'm going to just delete that now. Say I'm sure, and we'll start again. So I'll click record. Here we are. Okay, so now I have to think of a thing to say. I'm going to just do this as an impromptu, off the cuff recording, but clearly in a real situation, you could have your script in front of you, and you could be ready to read that out or do it from memory. So let's go for it. So I'm going to let me think. What could I say? Welcome to today's Gallery Teachers Masterclass podcast. Okay, here we go. You're listening to the Gallery Teachers Masterclass podcasting session. Welcome to the inaugural episode. Okay, so I've made my little recording. I've given a call to action of encouraging people to have a listen, and just waiting for it to process, as you can see. And once it's done that, all I have to do is click on the plus icon, and that will add my audio to the episode builder. So it's really straightforward and easy. So there we are. I click here, and there it is. It's now in the episode builder. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the transitions option here. And you'll see that you have lots and lots of different possibilities of different bits of audio that you can add. For example, if I wanted to click on this one, let's have a quick listen. Okay, let's imagine I like that one. I could then click on the plus icon, and there it is. And if I wanted to change the order of things, I can do it really, really simply and easily. If you are going to use music, which is not part of the builder, it's incredibly important to suggest that you do not break copyright, that you use what is called pod-safe music. There are different directories out there which have pod-safe music. One of my favorite ones is called Pixabay, which has not only royalty-free images, but also audio. So that's one way you can find audio. Also on YouTube, they have there's YouTube audio that you can use as well, which is absolutely fine. But please do not just upload your favorite top 40 song, because you'll be breaking copyright and you could be asked to pay a lot of money to do that. So please don't do that. Just use the tracks which are here, or you can actually use the music option here. But if you do that option, then you have to connect that with Spotify. and two, it will only work if you're listening to the audio on Spotify. Whereas if you're listening on other platforms such as Apple Podcasts, then that music will not be included there. Also, I would recommend that if you have a friend who's a musician, that they maybe produce some original piece of music that you can then use as an introduction or during the podcast, or little segues that you can make, little bits of audio to go from one section to another. That's a really nice idea as well. Okay, so we've done our first little bit of audio there. What we're going to do now is record the introduction to an interview. Okay, so here I'm going to click record now, and we'll carry on for the next bit. In today's podcast, we're looking at the power and the again, the great thing about doing things when you're just doing it off the cuff is you have to think carefully about it. So again, I will just quickly do that again. Just wait for it to finish processing, and I will. There we are. There we are. So let's start again. Okay. Okay. So are you a fan of educational podcasting? In this episode of our inaugural podcast for Gallery Teachers Masterclass, we're going to be talking to Joe, who's an expert on the power of podcasting, about why he thinks that educational podcasting in the languages classroom is a good idea. Over to you, Joe. There we are. So that's my little introduction. And obviously, I've referred to myself there, but in a real situation, I would ask someone else to do that. And the reason that I'm doing that now is because I'm going to show you how easy it is for somebody else to record some audio and send it to you as the gatekeeper to then include within your podcast. Okay, so there we are. I'm now going to click on the plus icon there, like that. Again, if I click on the three dots there, you can see I can click on the edit audio option, download audio, remove from episode. So if I clicked on, for example, on edit audio, just to show you how this works, you'll see that what happens now, you get this sort of waveform, which means I can listen back to it, and then I'll show you how easy it is to make an edit. Here we go. Are you a fan of educational? Okay, so let's imagine I wanted to say, start the audio at this point. I could now click split. There we are. So I've just done that like that. And as a result of that, it will then start from that point as opposed to the previous point. So let's have a listen now. Are you a fan of educational podcasting? In this episode of our inaugural podcast for Gallery Teachers Masterclass, we're going to be talking to Joe, who's an expert on the power of podcasting, about why he thinks that educational podcasting in the languages classroom is a good idea. Over to you, Joe. Okay, so as a result of doing that, we could now say go here, like that, and put click split. There we are. And you can see there's a little delete icon here. So I can click on delete, and that's all good. I think here the reason the delete icon hasn't appeared is because it's too small a cut, but that's fine. And then as a result of, in fact, let me just zoom in a second. Let's see if I can go to the start there. If I click there, there we are. Let's just zoom out a little bit more. Yeah, there we are. Can you see now that the dustbin has appeared? So I can now click on that, and that's good. So I can now click save. Save as one new segment. So I can either save as multiple segments or save as one new segment. I'm going to save this as one new segment. Like that. There it is. And you can see that it's been edited here and it's all fine. So that's a really useful way of being able to edit your different audio contributions, either in the web-based version, or you can do that via the app as well. So it's just finishing editing, and that's fantastic. There we are. The other thing you can do as well here, as you can see there, you've got the little icon there. So if I click on that, I can then change that to say intro. And then here, I could then click there, and the little pen icon. That's interesting. It's not letting me do that. There we are. There we are. And then here I could say intro to interview. Okay, perfect. Lovely. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use Vocaroo, and I'm going to record some audio, and you'll see how it's going to work. Okay, so, well, first of all, Joe, thank you ever so much for inviting me onto your podcast to talk about the power of educational podcasting in the languages classroom. as you know, I'm a big fan of podcasting. I've been doing podcasting since 2006, and I've seen face-to-face with my students at the time on how they got a huge amount of benefit from podcasting from the point of view of being able to produce their own episodes, of writing their own scripts, of being able to record their audio either individually or in small groups, how they've been able to reinforce the content they've been studying in class, but through a podcast, which has really helped them to understand in a more deeper way on the content that we've been looking at, how they've been able to produce a fun quiz to test the knowledge of the listeners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the power of publishing to a real audience. So I'm a big fan of podcasting, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak about podcasting on your show, Joe. Bye for now. So I made my quick recording. I could listen back to it here by pressing play. I could re-record by pressing the record button here. I can now click save and share, and I can click the copy link option. Now I could just send that to the teacher via, say, email or Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams. What I've found has been really useful is to use a Google form, as I was talking about earlier. So let me show you how this would actually work. If I put in forms.new, which is a little shortcut for creating a Google form, forms.new, you could then see here that it says untitled form. I could then click here and I could change that to podcast submission, for example. Under the untitled question, instead of multiple choice, I'm going to make it a short answer like that. And I'm going to put in just the word name like this. Ooh, let's do that again. There we are, just name. That's all good. I'm now going to make that a required question, so the student has to put their name in, and then I'm going to put in a copy option. And then here, instead of name, I'm going to write post your podcast contribution here. Okay. And then all the students would have to do is simply click here where it says short answer text. Oh, let's do that again. We don't need to make it a required question. And all I need to do, here we are. Okay, so if I click on the link option here, no, that's just in the title. That's fine. So now we've got our link, and now what I need to do is I need to send this form. So I click on the send option, and I click on the link option here. I can shorten it if I want to, and click copy. So this is what you would, as the teacher, would create beforehand. I would then go to a new tab like this, paste in the link, as you can see, and this is what the students would then see. So they have to put their name in here like that, and then all they'd have to do is go back to Vocaroo, copy the link, go to the Google form, and paste in the link like this. That's all they have to do, and then click submit. As a result of doing that, you can then collect in all the different answers, all the different contributions. You can see there's one response here like that. You then get a lovely create spreadsheet icon. You click on that and you click create like that. And that will then generate a new Google Sheet, and there it is. So from there, all I have to do as the teacher is click on the link, click there. That will then take me to a new page, as you can see is coming up right now. I can then listen to that as the teacher, make sure it's all okay. Let's have a quick listen. Well, first of all, Joe, thank you ever so much for inviting me on. That's all fine. I then can click download as the teacher. So I'm the gatekeeper. That's all good. And then click, let's put in gallery teachers like that and click save. I can then go back to here. There we are. Here it is, my episode builder. And all I have to do is literally drag and drop this, as you can see, like that, drag and drop it onto the page. Can you see? And it's even gone into the right place. So that's absolutely perfect. So as a result of that, I've got the introduction here. I've then got my audio, and I can now say record another little segue after that, or we could have a bit more music. So if I clicked on, say, transitions like this, and we, let's have a think, we could put something else in. Let's have a listen to this one. Okay, there we are. A nice little funny little ditty there. So we can then click on the plus icon, and there it is. And as I said, I can just drag and drop the episodes to change the order if I wanted to as well. Okay, so to finish off with, I'm going to click record, and I'm going to record now. Thank you so much to Joe there for giving us a little insight on his thoughts on the power of educational podcasting and how it can be used to enhance the teaching and learning of languages. We've now come to the end of our first episode, unfortunately. Thank you so much to the listeners for having a listen to this episode. Hopefully it's given you lots of good ideas on how you can use podcasting in the languages classroom. If you haven't subscribed already to the show, then I'd really encourage you to do that on Spotify or wherever you consume your podcasts. Just find us on lots of different platforms. Just search for the name of the podcast. You'll be able to find it there. You'll be able to subscribe, and that means you'll be up to date with any new episode that comes out in the future. Thanks ever so much, everyone, and take care. Happy podcasting. Okay, so that's a little sort of call to action at the end. And there we are, just waiting for that to finish processing. It's always nice, I think, to have a summary at the end and an outro. I could have pre-recorded that outro so that when I pull this together, you can have all the audio that you want in the library as well, so that you use the same audio on each show, so you have that sort of consistency. I can click here as well, like that, and I could put in outro or summary and outro. And again, if I wanted to, just show you the library. This is what the library looks like. So this is where you can find all the audio, not only that you have in this show, but any other show that you've created. And that's it. That's how it works. Okay. So that's a very, very simple little podcast. We've got it all good to go. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you then how we then publish it. You can preview it. You can see it's 2 minutes and 22 seconds, but that's all good. And I'm going to click Save Episode. Okay, so we've saved the episode, and now we need to give it a title. So we'll call it, let's have a think. So the power of educational podcasting. Okay, that's my title. For my description, I'm going to say, are you interested in podcasting? Question mark. Would you like to learn how easy podcasting is and how you can use it in the languages classroom? If your answers to these questions, let's make sure I put and I should put answer actually. If your answer to these questions, if your answer to these questions is yes, then this episode is for you, exclamation mark, that sort of thing. So you obviously here, this is where you put your description of the episode. You can put a link in as well if you want to refer them to something else as well that you're talking about. This is the published date, so that's all good. I'm going for now. You could schedule it if you wanted to. Choose a different time when you're going to publish your episode, that's really helpful for consistency, as I talked about earlier. So that's great. We've done that already. That's all good. I don't need to edit the audio. That's all fine. That's all looking good. That's great. Right, season number. So you could put this in if you wanted to. Episode number 1, episode type. We're going for a full one. That's fine. The content, obviously, it's clean. That's great. We've now got the upload new episode art. Okay, we're not actually going to do we're going to do the artwork for the whole podcast, not an individual episode, although you can do that if you wanted to. I'm just going to click on next now. Now, this is really important. This is when you set up your podcast. So we'll call it Gallery Teachers Masterclass. Okay. Podcast description. This is a podcast about podcasting for a gallery teachers masterclass. Okay, so just something like that. Obviously, if I was thinking about this more carefully, I would have pre-written a description, etc., or come up with a podcast name. It's really important that you think carefully about the podcast name and the description. But for this example, that's absolutely fine. So under the categories, I'm going to have a look through. Let's go for education. For the podcast language, I'm going to choose English, which is, as you can see, there are lots and lots of languages here. I'm going to choose English United Kingdom. And now I click continue. Okay, so this is where you make your podcast cover art, which is incredibly important. You can upload your own image, but again, make sure that you're not using any copyrighted images. You can click on search for a photo. That would be searching on your desktop, etc., or choose one for me. So if I click choose one for me, there we are. We've just got this one here. Let's just go back a sec, actually. Let's click next. That's all fine. Click continue. Let me just click on search for a photo. Sorry, my mistake. It's not asking me to upload a photo. This is where you can search for on Unsplash. So as you can see, that was the one that was given to us, but we can actually choose a different one. So I just go for, say, this one. That's what you can find. So a nice light background. You can, if you wanted to, you can zoom in, zoom out. That's fine. And then I click continue. Okay, now we're going to add some text. So as you can see here, you've got the text there. I'm going to choose black. And as you can see, it's just taken that from the episode, so from the podcast title, Gallery Teachers Masterclass. Okay, perfect. I'm going to remove the little anchor icon there by doing that. I can do other things like change the alignment. I can use the font as well if I wanted to. If I fancy a font being a bit different, like Bangers, for example, here, which will now, let's have a look. There we are. Perfect. You get the idea. You could spend a lot of time doing this if you wanted to. So let's just go for that, update cover art, and we're good to go. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so everything that you created here, you can always go back and edit. The only thing I wouldn't edit is the link to your actual podcast. So if I click publish, and there we are, you're almost live. Your podcast will be available on Spotify shortly. We'll let you know as soon as it's ready. Click continue, and there we are. So it's literally here. Now here you can see it says that's the link, which I can't edit at the moment, but I will be able to edit that in a second. So what I need to do now is go to settings, and if I go to update settings, there we are, and just go through here. Right, this is really important. As you can see, here it says anchor.fm. It's just given me the name Joe Dale or Joe-Dale 92. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to put in Gallery Teachers Masterclass. So that's the actual link. I've run out of characters. So let's just put Gallery Teachers then instead. That's fine. So it's going to be anchor.fm/Gallery Teachers. So this is a link that you do not want to change. Once you've customized it, you want to keep it like that. You can put your social media in here if you wanted to, like your Twitter account, etc. You might want to create a dedicated Twitter account for this podcast, but that's all good. You can delete your account as well if you wanted to do that from here. That's all fine. And you must remember to click save. Oh, I just seen as well, this should say Gallery Teachers with a capital T, and click save. Excellent. So we've done it. So all we have to do now is if we go to this link here, which is there, and we can go up to the top. In fact, we should, if I just go to click here, and there we are. There's the icon that we want. Podcast availability. That's all good. Okay. This final thing here is, as you can see, it says enable RSS feed. You can go in and manually add the RSS feed, which is the dynamic feed that you need to get people to subscribe to your podcast. So you need to add yourself to different directories. You can do that manually, which is what personally I would recommend. And if you do a search on how to do that with all the different platforms that are available, that's a pretty straightforward process. But you can also click here, for example, and you can submit that feed to here. it just means that you lose a little bit of control over the analytics, for example, on Apple Podcasts. If you do it that way, you can use Apple Podcast Connect, but manually, which is what I would recommend. Click on the enable option, or you can just add it in, add the RSS feed here. If I just show you, if I click on enable, there's the RSS feed. I can then click copy, and I can go through and submit them all this way. But that's doing it through the Anchor website. Personally, what I would do is just go separately to Apple Podcast Connect and submit it that way. That would take far too long for me to do that right now. And then you've got all these other platforms as well, directories, which also allow you to submit the podcast there as well. But you are going to be live on Spotify right now. So just to show you that this is working, let's go for it. So if I go to copy and I go to a new tab and paste it in, and then we should be live on Spotify. And there we are. And let's have a listen. So let's have a play and see what it sounds like. You're listening to the Gallery Teachers Masterclass podcasting session. Welcome to the inaugural episode. Are you a fan of educational podcasting? In this episode of our inaugural podcast for Gallery Teachers Masterclass, we're going to be talking to Joe, who's an expert on the power of podcasting, about why he thinks that educational podcasting in the languages classroom is a good idea. Over to you, Joe. Well, first of all, Joe, thank you ever so much for inviting me onto your podcast to talk about the power of educational podcasting in the languages classroom. As you know, I'm a big fan of podcasting. I've been doing podcasting since 2006, and I've seen face-to-face with my students at the time on how they got a huge amount of benefit from podcasting from the point of view of being able to produce their own episodes, of writing their own scripts, of being able to record their audio either individually or in small groups, how they've been able to reinforce the content they've been studying in class, but through a podcast, which has really helped them to understand in a more deeper way on the content that we've been looking at, how they've been able to produce a fun quiz to test the knowledge of the listeners, etc., 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 and the power of publishing to a real audience. So I'm a big fan of podcasting, and thank you so much for allowing me to speak about podcasting on your show, Joe. Bye for now. Thank you so much to Joe there for giving us a little insight on his thoughts on the power of educational podcasting and how it can be used to enhance the teaching and learning of languages. We've now come to the end of our first episode, unfortunately. Thank you so much to the listeners for having a listen to this episode. Hopefully it's given you lots of good ideas on how you can use podcasting in the languages classroom. If you haven't subscribed already to the show, then I'd really encourage you to do that on Spotify or wherever you consume your podcasts. Just find us on lots of different platforms. Just search for the name of the podcast. You'll be able to find it there. You'll be able to subscribe, and that means you'll be up to date with any new episode that comes out in the future. Thanks ever so much, everyone, and take care. Happy podcasting. There we are. So we've done it. Now, just to show you what the Anchor website looks like, if I go to anchor.fm/gallery teachers, there we are. It should be there live. And there it is. Perfect. Now you can see here as well, there's a message option now that we've published the podcast. So you could ask people to click on the message option. I can't do it myself because I'm logged in at the moment. But if I wasn't logged in, I would be able to do that. But that said, the students would have to create an account to be able to send you a message, which is why I recommend Vocaroo instead. So there we are. Hopefully that's given you a really good understanding on how to get started with Anchor, how to make your own podcast, the value of doing so. And it's given you like a step-by-step guide on how to get started. So thank you so much, everybody. I hope you found that step-by-step guide useful, and it's given you lots of ideas and thoughts on how you can use podcasting in your own languages classroom. Thanks so much, everyone. I would really recommend, as always, that you do subscribe to the Gallery Teachers Workshop Library. There's a whole host of high quality professional development workshops there for you to access as part of your subscription. It's really a treasure trove of useful information presented by ELT professionals from around the world. So I'd really encourage you all to sign up and to learn as much as you would like to learn on the areas that you're interested in, such as podcasting, of course.